Hey guys, welcome to Budget with a July Dreamer. My name is Miranda, and on this channel I talk about personal finance, specifically sharing tips on how you can save money, how you can invest, as well as budget. So in today's video I'll actually be sharing how to budget on a low income, as well as how to pay debt off on a low income. And I will be using myself as an example because I went through this myself, and I want to show you how I was able to pay off over £11,000 in debt within about 18 months, and I was on a really low income at that time. If you're new to my channel and you like what I'm sharing, then do not forget to hit that subscribe button, as well as like this video so that it can be shown to more people who might be in need of this information. So I will actually be looking down on my laptop as I walk you through how I was able to pay off over £11,000 in debt, and this debt was from payday loans, credit cards, store cards, everything in between. So I will be, like I said, I'll be looking down on my laptop as I walk you through how I was able to pay off this debt. So the first thing that I did when I decided that I wanted to be debt free was, one, find out whom I owed money to. So I sat down, I looked through all the letters that I was getting. I went back to my parents' house, checked out all the letters that were coming in my name, and as also what I decided to do was also check my credit score, because you know these date agencies and companies that you owe money to, they will report to the credit agencies that obviously this person is not paying us back the money. So I use these as sources to find out whom I owed. So I looked at the letters that I was receiving, the emails that I was receiving, as well as checked my credit score, my credit report, to find out whom else I was owing money to. And then when I did that, I figured out how much I owed each and every single one of these companies. Now obviously I didn't just look at the letters, the credit score, the credit report, and figure out that, oh, this is how much I owed them. I decided to give each and every single one of them a call. Some of them, the information was there in the letters, so it was easy, but others it wasn't, because there was obviously compounding interest that obviously had increased over the months that I did not make any payments, and I needed to find out exactly how much I owed them. One thing actually looking back that I should have also asked was the interest rate, but anyway, I did not bother with checking out the interest rate. I was just interested in knowing how much I owed them. So I wrote down, what I'm showing on my tracker right now is all of the companies that I owed money to, and there were about 20, I think about 18, because one of them is like my iPad and the second one was my rent. But I kind of decided to figure out how whom I owed money to, and because I did that, they told me, oh, we sold the debt you owed us to another company. This is why you see another column in here showing the newer owner of the debt that I had. So that's what I decided to do. I checked, and I was glad I found that out. Then, as I mentioned, I also figured out how much I owed each and every single one of these companies. So for example, Clarity had been sold to 1 month loan, and I was able to find out that I owed them £450. So then when I had calculated the total of all of these debts, this came up to £11,129.79. A lot of money, especially when you're on a low income. And I decided to make these repayments pay off my debt immediately after I finished university. So when I got my first graduate job, I made this decision that I didn't want to carry this debt any longer, and I wanted to pay it off. And then what I decided to do was, looking at the amount that I owed, I looked at it and I was like, well, how much can I realistically afford for each one of these companies? So most of them range from, I could afford to pay that company £25, £35, £45, or £50. It kind of ranged, except for my rent, which obviously was £350, and I couldn't negotiate that. So I needed to make sure I had £350 every single month for my rent. So I decided to obviously like sit down, like, okay, I owe 50 to this company, I could pay them £25 a month. And I decided to also employ what is called the debt snowball method of repaying debt. So basically, debt snowball teaches you, or implores you, I should say, to pay off the smallest debt first. Whereas avalanche, if you've heard of the avalanche method, this one actually implores you to pay off the debt with the highest interest rate. But I preferred the debt snowball purely because I loved seeing the number of debt that I had decrease as I paid one off. So starting with the smallest really helped me to feel good about remaking these payments, and I thought I was gonna get in out of debt quicker than if I was just paying off the highest the debt with the highest interest. So I used the debt snowball method and then figured out how much I wanted to pay to each of these companies. And because it was debt agencies, I was able to negotiate with him how much I could afford every single month. Some of the companies which had not sold to date agencies refused, and they told me what the minimum payment was. So I kind of like, okay, I went back to the drawing board and figured out, okay, this is the minimum repayment. Can I afford to do that? And most of these debts I could, but not all of them. And I went back to them. I showed them my debt tracker. This is one of the things I also did. I showed them my debt tracker so they could understand that, okay, I had all of these debts that I was trying to pay off, and if they insist on a higher amount, I'm gonna have to put them on the back burner. Sure, my credit score will be impacted, but I'll pay them when I could afford to pay them. So most of them looked at the tracker and they were like, okay, fine, £25 is fine, or £50 is fine. So this is how I worked that out. And then when I started actually tracking, I knew how much I had at that time. So what I decided to do, looking at the letters, was looking at how much I owed that company. And then when I started making those repayments, because I didn't just stop making repayments on all of them, I still made repayments. It's just some of them bounced a couple of times because I didn't have any money. So again, when I called the companies, they told me this is how much you order. So for example, with Clarity, I started off with £450 and 1 pence. When I checked with them and told them I could pay £25, it was actually £350 that I owed them. I also got the reference numbers, which I've blocked out for privacy reasons, and then I also got the contact number, if I could text them, if I could call them, what was available to me. And also for the companies that I agreed to pay via direct debit, I put that in my additional informations column. This was actually my first ever debt tracker. I'd never had something like this before. I kind of just kept everything in my head, but having it on a tracker really helped me. So any additional information that I had about these companies, I wrote that down, and then I started tracking. So the first month that I started tracking was August. I finished university in May. I had my first job in June, and then I'd settled down and decided I wanted to handle this debt. So the first month I started remaking payments was around August time. So August was when I was actually negotiating with this company. So there was only a few companies that I was able to make payments to. And then in September, I actually started officially for a lot of them. So for some of them, I had said £25, and that's how much I was paying. And I was able to track using my little tracker. And this is my initial one because I didn't want to show my older one when I'd finished paying all of the debt, but I just wanted to show my initial planning. I kind of had all the months tracked all the way from August 2013 through to June 2014, and I had reasons for that because I thought, the longest one would take me up to then. So this was part of my planning. Obviously, when I started employing the debt snowball method, I actually realized it was going to take me about 18 months to clear all of my debt. So in the initial planning phases, like I said, it made sense for me to contact the company, find out how much I owed them and how much they'll be willing to accept as a minimum repayment. And if it was too much based on the debt that I had at that time, I would tell them, okay, listen, this is how much I can afford. I can't afford what you're asking. And then we came up with a repayment plan. And most of these lenders were actually very understanding. They were able to hear me out. And especially when I sent them the tracker, they were like, this girl is in debt, so they were able to see that, I wasn't just saying to them that I can only make £25 repayment every single month. They actually saw that I did have all of these other debts that I needed to also take care of, but I could afford this much. And the reasons why I actually requested not only the reference numbers but their contact numbers as well was so that whenever I had a little bit extra that month, I could make an extra repayment. And this is something I explained to them, that this is my intention, and they were very happy with doing that. But like I said, not every lender will actually be happy to do that. Some of them were quite mean. But I kind of just told them, do you know what, it's okay, I'll speak to your manager when you guys call me again to chase me for this payment, because I've told you what I can afford. You're telling me this is impossible, then you know what, we're kind of at a standstill. I'll deal with you when I can. I'm not recommending that you do this, but there are situations where it is unavoidable. You kind of just have to focus on what you can afford, and also pay them what you can afford, and continue until they realize that setting up a repayment plan with you is the best course of action. So this is how I was able to pay off my £11,000 of debt, owing various companies. It wasn't a nice time or a nice part of my life, but I guess it's something that I had to learn, because I had not really taken financial planning seriously until after I finished university, because I knew I didn't want to carry this debt on for the rest of my life. Now, so I finished university 2013, this is 2021, so that's 9 years, and I'm completely debt free. I was debt free 2 years after I finished university, which was great. And then I did have some tumbles along the way, but mostly was able to remain debt free. It is very hard to stay debt free, especially when you don't have an emergency fund. And this is something that I learned the hard way, that after I came out of debt, I then had an emergency that I had to deal with, but I had no money. So I went back to my credit card and I started making repayments on that credit card until I completely paid it off. But if I had an emergency fund at that time, I would have been able to handle that emergency by using the emergency fund, and then just started refunding my emergency fund as opposed to using a credit card. This is one of the reasons why when I'm recommending people paying either pay off debt or saving, I personally think that you should do both. I think you should prioritize your debt first, but also have a little bit, even £10, £20, go into a savings account where you'll be keeping your emergency fund. So if you've heard of Dave Ramsey's baby steps, the first one is to have an emergency fund of $1,000, so about £1,000 for the UK. But most of us who have actually been in debt know that it's not realistic, to be honest, to put just £1,000, but I understand the principles why he recommends that. But for me, I looked at my expenses at that time, and I knew that I could actually get away with about £2,000 in an emergency fund. So that's baby step number 1 on Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps. And then baby step number 2, I believe, is to pay off all of your debt. Is it? Yeah, I think it's pay off your debt, and that's what I did. And I used the debt snowball method to pay off my debt. And I think one of the other things that helped was finding cheap accommodation, so that I only paid £350 from my salary, which was, I think, £1,500, £1,600, because my total monthly repayment towards debt was $1,200. So I kind of had to find a way to make that work for me. I would have preferred to stay home with my parents, whereas I paid off all of my debt, but because my new job after university was miles away, it was better for me to rent nearby to my work. So I stayed in shared accommodation, so renting a room in a house, and I paid £350. I didn't have to pay council tax or other bills on that. I just had to pay £350. That helped. Then I also made sure that I got a monthly bus pass, because at that time I wasn't driving, so I needed to make sure I got a bus pass to get to work. So that was very important to me. My food budget was between £75 to £100, and I also used to shop at home. You know, I'll go to visit my parents and I'll shop in their fridge, take some stuff with me, and that helped me actually save up more money to pay towards the debts that I had, and this really worked for me. And I think one of the other things that I did was meal prep. I did a lot of meal prep, so my Monday to Friday food was cooked on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and I just made sure that what I made is what I ate and didn't do any takeaways whatsoever. And then on the Saturday I would actually put between £5 and £10 to maybe go out with friends for a drink. Otherwise I'll just make the food at home and then I'll go picnic or do whatever with my friends. So it's kind of like I did employ a few things to help me focus all of my money towards paying off debt. And also one thing I did, or with the, I think about 200 or 100 pounds that I had left over, was try to put a little bit of the money into savings. But then I figured, my thinking at that time was, actually, why don't I just use this extra 200 pounds instead of saving it? Why don't I just use it to pay off like my smallest debt completely? So that would have been like Clarity to pay that off completely. And this is why I was able to actually pay off my debt quicker. But I think if you have a lot of debt, then I think you must focus on paying that off. If you don't have a lot of it, then I think you can balance paying off your debts, you know, paying more than the minimum of your debt, especially on those with higher interest rates, and also saving some money for emergency fund if you don't have one. If you do have one, then I'll just say go aggressively at repaying off your debt. The debt snowball method I liked worked better for me, purely because it was a psychological thing. Seeing my list of people that I owed money decrease was actually something that was motivating and made me, you know, not enjoy the process, but made it more bearable than actually paying off the one with the highest interest rate, which you don't actually necessarily in that moment see the change when you make all those repayments. But with the debt snowball, you can actually see the numbers decrease quicker than on the avalanche method. In the long run, sure, the avalanche method is better, but psychologically, especially when you've been in debt for a long time, debt snowball is the way to go. So this is all I wanted to share really on how I paid off my debt on a low income, how I budgeted. And again, I say it for my food budgeting, I literally focused on just making sure I did a lot of meal planning and didn't spend a lot of money frivolously on like candy, because I love sweets, candy or cakes or what have you. I kind of just like, okay, I bought in bulk and made all my food in advance, and then when I run out of stuff, I'll just use my allocated money, which was about £100 maximum, and then I would spend that money. So that really helped me on my journey. So if you are in a similar situation, I recommend, one, call each and every single one of the people or companies that you owe money to, understand how much you owe and how much they will be willing to accept every single month. Do not overcommit yourself. Don't pay too much, you know, especially when you have a lot of debt. And then one of the things I'll do is sit down, look at how much money you get in, if there's a way for you to increase how much you bring in every single month, and then just start attacking your debt aggressively, either using the debt snowball method or avalanche, you know, depending on what you want to do. So this is all I had for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this content. Do not forget to subscribe so that this video may be made available to more people, and you know, YouTube can be a bit nice to me as a small channel. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.